You are listening to That Big CEO Energy, where we talk all things business, life, marriage, and push you to a new edge of discovering what that big CEO energy means for you. Listen, I understand that we have barriers that we carry from when we were once employees, and those have impacted us as we continue to build our businesses. I'm here to walk alongside you and give you encouragement through interviews with friends and other women in business who have broken down those barriers and paved their own way. Tune in with me as we uncover some of the unconscious things that we do that keep us from building that big CEO energy we've always dreamed about. Let's dive in. Have you ever felt like you were just doing it all? No matter if you were delegating as much as you possibly could, no matter if you were hiring all of the proper people, you still felt like you were in the hamster wheel. Same. I am talking a little bit about the mental shift that changed it all in my business. And I'd like to walk you through this journey because I think it's important for us as women to understand why we feel like that. Why do we feel like we need to be doing it all? And sometimes, right, it's our environment. Sometimes it is the stories that we tell ourselves. And other times it is because we are doing it all and we need to scale back or delegate. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And I think first, I am trying to show up in such a way where it is gracious and kind. And so kindness to me means that I am sharing the raw and authentic parts of how I scaled who I am and how I scaled my business. I'm going to take you on a little bit of a journey if you'll ride that wave with me. And the journey is how I left corporate and into how I used to view myself in my business. And I've given bits and pieces to you about how I left corporate and sort of the strategy behind what I had to do. But I never really made it full circle in the sense of talking about the mental shift that had to happen. And at the end of the day, that's the most important thing. So let's talk a little bit about that. So when I was in corporate, you always get sort of talked to and directed to, and that is your lane of being, right? The employee. The employee understands what their job is. They understand the ask from their employer, and they do that job. And their performance is based on how they do their job, when they show up, et cetera, et cetera. So you really get in a positioning that it is easy to fall into the trap and the belief of, if I show up and do my job and I exceed expectations in my lane of business and my zone of genius, then I will continue to grow up the corporate ladder. So you do that, right? You find ways to just be better at your job. And at some capacity, there is still always a manager or there's always someone in a leadership role that is responsible for your journey and responsible for moving you up the ladder when the time is right, right? So you sort of get into this mode of doing what is asked of you. And there are areas for you to excel when being asked, but you're still under the helm of someone conducting your train. And so when you start this side hustle journey, right, as most entrepreneurs do, they're still working a 9-to-5. And if this is your case, then we're talking to you at the moment. When you start sort of the side hustle and you are working for yourself, you take a lot of those principles that you've already been doing in your day-to-day job and you shift them after you get home at night or on the weekend or whenever you're working on your business. you shift those and pivot those into your business to be able to move the needle of your business forward. And then ultimately, if this is your goal and this is your plan, you move out of corporate and now you're doing your side hustle as a full-time business venture and you're an entrepreneur and all of the things, right? That's usually how it progresses. What I would say is, especially as a woman in business, we find ourselves always looking for someone who can help hold us accountable or someone who will always check in with us. And this is the part where it gets kind of lonely, because as much as we want that, entrepreneurship is really lonely because you don't have somebody coming to check on you. You don't have somebody checking in on what your sales revenue is and are you meeting the bottom line. That's your job. That is your job. And so sometimes women in business can get in this trap of feeling this imposter syndrome or feeling this, I can't do it because of X, Y, and Z. And really, the translation is, I can't do it because I don't think I'm fully capable. I can't do it because I don't have somebody else to check in with my business to make sure that I'm doing everything just as so. And it's a trap that we tell ourselves. And for so long, in probably the first year of my business, that's where I was surviving. My husband will tell you I will still find myself having conversations. Bless him for listening to all of my garble. But it used to be more frequent in the first year where I was, do you think I should X, Y, and Z? What do you think I should do? And really, at the end of the day, as loving as he is, right? He had to say to me, what do you think you should do? And I'm standing there or sitting there looking at him going, well, I don't know. That's why I asked you, right? Anticipating that he's just going to make the business decision for me and I'm going to make that decision. And as long as everything pans out, by God, it's my decision now. When instead I had to reframe that and I had to show up in conversations that when we were checking in or he was asking me how it was going, it was conversations of like, I think I'm doing okay. I mean, I think I'm doing good. I'm going to try X, Y, and Z, and I'm going to see if, that'll work. And if not, I guess we'll see. Because what was happening is my mental focus was always on, am I doing enough? Am I doing enough of whatever it is? And will it be good enough? Will it position me into an area of focus that will generate enough revenue? When I started to recognize that this was something that I was chasing after in my business, that I was seeking validation and I was seeking someone that was telling me, yes, you're doing a great job, or no, I would do this differently. I was holding myself to a standard and putting myself on a pedestal that I was never going to be able to reach. And I was never able to reach it because I had set my expectations like that of an employer. I wasn't figuring out what brought me joy. I wasn't figuring out what I could fail at in order to make myself feel like I was generating something that was different and like how I wanted to show up in my business. I think when we leave corporate, we have this idea that, yes, I can build my business. And if it's linear to sort of what you are coming out of, so say, I'm just going to use myself for example, right? Is say the OBM business and fractional COO business. I was regulating myself the same way in my business as I was when I was an employee. So when I was a manager, I was holding myself to the same standards of the company that I was working for, not realizing that I can pave something different. I can show up different in my business. Why? Because nobody's here to tell me that I'm doing it wrong. Nobody's here to tell me that I can't, start working at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday, that I, have to leave at 5 p.m. Nobody's sharing that with me. those were all boundaries that I put on myself of, I have to work 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. Well, why? Well, that's because that's what I did. You see, all of the mentality that I had was based off of how I was working in a professional environment, not how I was working in my company. So what changed? There was a day that I remember distinctly, and I was in therapy. And of course, Callie's always in therapy. You will soon find this out. But I was talking about this way that I was feeling of, I have to X, Y, and Z. And I remember my therapist looked at me and said, you have to. That's interesting. Tell me more about that. And I said, well, I just feel like I have to always be, I just feel like I always have to be on social media, or I always have to feel like I have to, generate to X, Y, and Z, or I have to, send my emails this way, or make sure that I respond, instantaneously and be available 24/7. She said, why? And I said, because what if they go to someone else? And she said, what you do today is not going to affect you responding to emails. How you are showing up is going to attract the right people who want to work with you because of who you are and the service that you can provide them, not how quickly you respond to an email. Nobody cares about that. 0 people actually on the planet care about the timing of emails. Now, we're not going to go buck wild and, leave them hanging for 2 days. But you don't have to feel like when you're out at the grocery store in the middle of your day, because you can, that you need to be answering emails. That's your time away from your office. When you come back to your desk, those emails will get answered. So I associated the corporate mentality of you must respond right away to make people feel like you are right on top of it. And instead of doing that, I needed to reframe my focus and be genuine in my emails so that when they do receive a response, it's not just top of the letters, sending the email back just to respond, but rather it's thoughtful and considerative. So when I decided that I was going to take on this entrepreneurial journey, as it were, in the middle of this, I had some shifts that were happening, and I had to be mindful of what really was happening. What was the parts of me that were driving me absolutely crazy because I am no longer in a corporate environment and I don't have to act that way. And what are the mental shifts that I have to have in place in order for this to be successful for me, really? And drop this all or nothing mentality that I had. One of the things that this all or nothing mentality is, it's a very masculine way of thinking. And when we were in corporate, right, when we were taught to be in the workforce, we were taught with you do it all the way or you just don't do it at all. And one of the things is when we get in that mindset, women who stop following their protocols because they couldn't fulfill this, achieve everything, one of the things that they do is they go right back to the old patterns because they won't feel like such a failure, right? Being in the comfort zone won't make them feel like life is just out of whack. And life is not black or white, and neither is your mentality and the way that you think. And so when we put that pressure on ourselves to be that way, it creates sort of this vacuum of thinking of now nothing is going to end right. everything that I do is going to be, just awful. And so I'll just keep referring to other people. I will just keep asking other people what they think, and it'll all be good. And I think sometimes what happens is if you do this, the all or nothing usually ends up in nothing. And this pattern mimics sort of the binge restrict cycle that most women are already stuck in. And so if you want to live in balance, you have to accept that this transformation of leaving corporate, this transformation of you stepping into being your own boss and being your own CEO and running your life how you want it to run happens in layers. And I truly don't think that, you should give up simply because it's hard or, I just can't do it. But really create a strategy, strategy approach. And sometimes that looks like writing it down so that you can begin to understand what you need from yourself and what other people can expect, because I think that that's important too. The other thing is to stop wearing stress like a status symbol. This stress burnout, I'm stressed out, but I'm still functioning. That mentality has become quite the epidemic. And the reality is that stress doesn't make you more important. It doesn't make you more qualified. It doesn't make you more worthy because you're the one that's running around like a chicken with their head cut off. It literally is like this time suck that happens because we are so worried about whatever is happening that we don't spend time being grateful. We just spend time being busy. And at the end of the day, you have to understand that your worth does not come from the level of stress that you endure. Your worth does not come from the level of stress that you endure. There was really a time that I thought, I'm not stressed. How am I stressed? I'm not stressed. And then I realized that this was this toxic pattern and belief that my body had just rolled with for a really long time. I was used to living in a stress mode 24 hours, 7 days a week. And I don't understand still to this day. I don't really understand the why and why I was so stressed because, we're not curing cancer. We're not sending anybody to the moon. At least I'm not in my business. And so why am I so stressed all the time? And perhaps the stress needs to function as a wake-up call for you. And if that is where you are, just being stressed out all of the time, let's connect because I have some thoughts. And at the end of the day, I want you to always remember this. Your worth is not based on how hard you push yourself to win a gold star or a pat on the back. It's just not. The third thing that I really had to get behind was I was not my job title. And it's very interesting because when I was in corporate, there's this identity that you put on, right? And there are these habits that you create that your entire life and really your character of life becomes what your job title was. And I giggle about this now because my daughter still says that I have a customer service voice. And it comes out in me when we're at restaurants. It comes out at me when I'm on the phone talking to somebody. And there was a time that it really became my identity, that I functioned like that all the time. And I would always be sort of like switched on, right? When really, like, I love the work that I do every day. And I am so many, many other things other than this job title. And so one of the things that I had to do with my mentality on this when I shifted out of corporate was really find the center of what is my new quote unquote job title? But B, how can I show up as my authentic self and create my job title based out of that, rather than showing up to be a job title that was already written on paper for me. And so I got to create a job title that makes sense, with boundaries that make sense, with things that I need. And then I was able to understand that my personality really was the thing that is in the center of my job title. And so if you are wrestling with this, one thing that I would say is if you don't have any hobbies or interests or dreams outside of your job, you need to go get some. You need to take random classes until you figure out what it is. Maybe you're into pottery. Maybe you are into yoga. But how do you know unless you step outside of your comfort zone and you do the thing? So please find yourself outside of your job. And if you are a mom, one other thing that I would say is beginning to do this now before you become an empty nester is super, super important. The fourth thing that really came as a realization to me was living for the weekends. Sunday scaries or whatever, High Five Friday, whatever it is a real thing. And I understood that people would and do actually have the Sunday scaries. And it's an actual term now to describe the anxiety that we feel in the anticipation of Monday coming. And so there's just something really, really wrong that was happening when I was in corporate. And I remember one of my positions, I lived a mile away, and I would start crying when I was getting ready in the bathroom, and I would drive the whole mile to work. And then I would drive the whole mile home because I just probably was stressed and, really living out that job title and being on all the time. And it's not uncommon, right, for especially a working woman to be waiting for Monday to turn into Wednesday and then Wednesday to glide into Friday. When you're just plain exhausted and you feel like you're living in a trap of you have to do everything and it has to be done on the weekends because how could you possibly have time for anything else during the week? You really owe it to yourself to enjoy the week and not just the weekend. And I think it starts with waking up a little bit earlier just to give yourself some gratitude. Spending time in your car in the quietness for 5 minutes after you come after work and you pull in your driveway. Just sit there in silence. Find gratitude in those moments. There are little things that you can do that doesn't have to be living life on the weekends. And one of the things that I probably will get is, well, I don't, I have kids. And so I get up, whether you go to the gym or you don't, I get up, I go to work, I have to drop the kids off to school, I have to pick them up after school, and then I have to, get them home. We have dinner, I have to get them a bath, and I have to get them in bed. And I do that Monday through Friday. I don't have any other time. And really, it's where are the pockets of time that you can just find quiet and peace and just sit with yourself. Just enjoy your company. We're not saying that you have to run out after work every day and take a Pilates class and redo your bathroom in the middle of a work week. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is do one thing every day that brings you joy, that brings you a sense of freedom, that you are doing for self-care. Maybe it's reading a book for just 5 minutes on your lunch break, or when you get home, or before the littles get up. You owe it to yourself to enjoy not just the weekend, but every single day that you wake up and take a breath. Every day. And the final thing is, being just a general woman out in the workforce can be overwhelming. And I get that and I understand that. And it is because our culture really has worked through really pulling a woman's weakness, a submission, and their vulnerability out of who they are as being a negative situation. And this really can be emotional unease. It can be, burnout. It can even lead to illness. But really it becomes that we are so hooked on pretending to be, running next to the man in order to make it in this world. And I think sometimes what we lack is the strength to sort of pave our own lane. And I think one of the things that has really helped me is to take stock in, what is my femininity? How can I help it show up in my business? And when I discovered sort of that my business is never going to look the same as a man's business or even another woman's business, my business has to look exactly how I want it to look. And it can, but it can't do that when I am in the middle of watching what everybody else is doing, of being worried that my business isn't looking like everyone else's. That honestly will make you more sick than anything else. And so I think it's really high time that we stop looking at what everybody else is doing and start understanding what is happening within us that is creating a divide and a stopping block to why we are not getting to the levels that we need to get at. So all of these things really have taken a unconventional turn in my life and really have grabbed a hold of me to help me understand that I am different. I am able to do the things that I want to do because I have resources and tools that are available to me. And if I just take the step and take the leap of faith to do those things and reach out when I need help, then I will have what success looks like to me. So I hope that this was helpful. I hope that, you take something away and give your own mentality a shift. And I am encouraged by each one of you every day that steps outside of the bounds and paves your own way, because that is what we're meant to do in life. We are all made up differently, and we all have a different story to share. And it is high time that we start to embrace our uniqueness. Until next time. Thanks for tuning into the show today. If you heard something that helped you, I would love it if you would leave a review and share it with your friends. This helps more people just like you become inspired to move the needle of their big CEO energy into a positive direction. If you would like to learn more about how I can help you streamline and position your business for growth or lead your business as a CEO, feel free to jump into the show notes with all of the links to find me. And don't forget to head over to Instagram so we can be pals.